Hello, this is Michael Hexter. Welcome to Politics 2100 here on YouTube. So, this episode I'm calling Media's Hyperinflation of Left Extremism in Both-sidesism Provides Cover for GOP's Neofascist Putsch. So, sorry for all the isms and ists in this title, but I'm trying to reinforce the very serious parallels between what's happening in the United States now and what happened in mid-century and early and mid-century Europe, and also what is happening in other countries around the world. So trying to break through the American exceptionalist language that's sometimes used in media accounts. And but anyway, beside the use of isms in my title, I I'm talking about the media's basically unconscious or semi-conscious role in creating a cover and a justification for a end to American democracy via the GOP's neo-fascist putsch or its ongoing, or you can call it neo-Confederate putsch, or authoritarian, minoritarian putsch, or coup. And it's a coup that's also, it's partly done through elections and through laws. So it's not the same thing. I'm using it, putsch in a metaphorical way, a little bit, in the sense that though it could come to armed, the GOP is backed by unorganized, or both organized and unorganized, military forces, or paramilitary forces, or they call upon them, or there are factions within the military and also paramilitaries of the militias and so forth and so on that provide an additional edge to their power grabs. So, anyway, I'm using that word to exaggerate. Some I agree that I'm exaggerating when I say the word putsch, because, but not by much, because basically January 6th, as people have talked about recently, is that there was a coup, an actual coup attempt behind the paramilitary takeover of the Capitol building for a temporary period, that was about basically a switch of electors, basic falsifying the electoral process to install Trump for a second term. And so, but anyway, the topic that I'm talking about is whether you call it a putsch or you call it a attempted putsch or a power grab. We're talking about two levels of power hunger, or two vastly different levels of power hunger between the Democratic Party and the Republicans, and also willingness to do almost anything to grab power on one side, and on the other side, almost the total opposite attitude on the part of the Democrats to almost not to seek power. They do not want power. They do not want to exercise power, and they seem to be electorally incompetent in trying to hold on to their majorities, hold on to eventually the presidency in 2024. They seem to be incapable of mounting a political strategic effort. So the contrast leads to, in essence, one party grabbing power from the other party because the other party is so listless. And anyway, still, now getting to this title though, and to the topic that I'm focusing on, the media is constantly using both sidesism the New York Times did it recently with their cancel culture, threats to free speech piece, and while there are a couple different currents within the New York Times, so it's not entirely always both-sidesism, they do default to it. It is a comfortable place for most media figures to shield the right-wing extremism in the GOP, both in terms of this sort of political power hunger, but also in terms of policy, in terms of actual proposed laws coming from the Republicans, especially on the state level currently, that there is just no comparison between the right-wing extremism that is rampant throughout the GOP, and by sitting also with sitting lawmakers, and the equivalent on the Democratic side, where there is no equivalent in terms of left extremism among any sitting lawmaker. And furthermore, out in the streets, okay, extra parliamentary left is not the extra parliamentary left in the United States is so small and so distant from power. They are not cooperating at all with the Democratic Party, even though in the fever dreams of the right wing, they are supposedly in collaboration. The Democratic Party is constantly trying to distance itself from not even its base, the left, whatever extreme elements, let's say 100,000 people or so you could say are extreme left in the United States, that those people are considered pariahs in the Democratic Party, even in the leftward fringe of the Democratic Party. And so the existence of an extreme left in the United States it's minuscule, and it's not anywhere near power. And furthermore, those expressions, for instance, I am personally not I want the left to become more left and more powerful and to be more decisive and to do radical things in the context of rule of law, okay, in the context of proposing laws that create radical change in our society, that are well thought through and that are not, anti-democratic, and also are, but put us on the path to facing the challenges of the 21st century, which we're not doing, okay, in the United States. But anyway, I am not particularly, I'm not a defender of the tactics of some people, those very few people on the far left that or the extreme left that we're talking about. And those people are not nearly, even while they might do some property damage, the fewest of them are dangers to other people, okay, in terms of, being violent, okay? Meanwhile, on the right wing, we have figures with audiences in the millions who are constantly inciting violence from the Republican base. So there's just no comparison. So the immediate occasion for me to comment on this thing that I've been talking about really for, on and off for the last year or 2 years, whatever, in terms of the media's both-sidesism, or basically doing unconscious PR or cloaking the right-wing extremism by saying, well, there's this left-wing extremism as well, so it's both sides. So they're creating a cloak around the right-wing extremism, and the occasion again for me to comment on this is that Elon Musk, who is poised to take over Twitter, who is poised to buy Twitter, and barring some events that, it's not 100% guaranteed that he will, but he has also been trolling essentially during this period. He's someone who has very little self-control apparently, and he is trolling and creating all kinds of rationales for why he's buying Twitter and what he's going to do and how will be such a good manager of Twitter or a good restructurer of Twitter or owner of Twitter, really. So, and he put out a tweet which is a fabrication, a fiction about how the right in the period 2008 to the present has remained at exactly the same point in terms of its radicality or right-wingness. Okay. Meanwhile, the left, according to this amazing this diagram, which is unfortunately a something that you see bandied about by both right-wingers and what might be called reactionary centrists, is that the left somehow is in the period 2008 to 2021, 2022, is going out to the left extreme. So it's becoming so very extreme, while the right is just staying the same. So Musk, I mean, just to sort of, I mean, it is troubling that Musk is trying to take over Twitter and he's a billionaire who is going to try to use Twitter for his own more than he already has to his own benefit, and he may also try to get Trump back onto Twitter and so forth and so on. And he's talking about free speech is his thing, okay, but he apparently has bought in. So this is a product that this man who knows very very little about political science, or at least he doesn't reflect it in his. He's someone who's ill. I think I believe Musk is someone who is quite unstable in some ways mentally. But anyway, he or certainly he seems to have some personality issues that are very. He seems very very narcissistic and to have lacking, certainly when it comes to Twitter, impulse control. But anyway, he is reflecting this kind of idea that you could make up a left-wing extremism in this tweet and use it as a justification to crack down on the left. He's tried to moderate this by saying, well, there's both a left. So he's both, in other tweets, he's sort of parroted this kind of, well, there's both a left and a right extremism, and I'm not for either of them. But he has tended to favor the right-wing extremist view, which this tweet with this left-wing supposedly becoming so very radical and left, is the justification for the right to say, we're going to crack down on those people. And this is something that Trump talked about. He continually, or still talks about it, spinning a yarn about how BLM protesters and Antifa are the reason why he would declare martial law. And so this is all part of the you could say casus belli, the rationale for war, in sense of with political war being between the right wing and the rest of society. That he's saying, well, this is the reason, this is the cause of our war, is because these people are doing this, and so we need to crack down. We need to, and that Musk is parroting this is very very troubling. So we see then the media has created a permissive environment, among other things, by not reporting the truth consistently, and reporting consistently on the asymmetrical polarization of the United States, where the right wing is all the way over to the far right, is not all of the right, but the GOP is centered further on one of the farthest right parties, and certainly large parties in the world. Okay, up there with the BJP. In India and so forth and so on, in terms of a mass party that is of the far right, and so which is something actually that Americans don't know enough about how radical the BJP is in India. But anyway, this permissive environment has allowed people like Musk, sort of in his ignorance and his trollishness. Okay, he's trolling too. He's trying to get people like me and other people to sort of respond to him. He's trying to get a rise out of people, but also at the same time, because he has multiple billions of, he has hundreds of billions of dollars currently to play around with. He is his trolling has negative effects on the society as a whole. This is some of the problem of having billionaires, period, in a society, because their whims, essentially, and their fancies are given such enormous weight and have enormous consequences, because he can buy Twitter, which is a vital communication tool. I use Twitter a fair amount. Now, other people think it's trivial or it's a plaything or whatever it is, but it's actually very important. And even, accounts that sort of report on his Twitter, like in the Times and so forth and so on, are doing chin scratching, things about how problematic Twitter is and so forth and so on. And Twitter has problematic aspects to it, but it's also a vital utility. It could be much better, but it happens to be, of the social media platforms, in my view, the most useful one. And so, at least for me, or for having serious discussion, there are other social media platforms that have other uses and so forth and so on. But it's a potentially a workspace, really, for democracy, or certain aspects of democracy, and that he would take it over and try to do something with it and make it his private property is extremely problematic and dangerous. So and he might do, and there is a slim chance that he could do something with it and make it, quote unquote, better, but that's a very, very slim chance. It's not something that really regulators, if they knew what they were doing, would allow. Okay, but anyway, and furthermore, probably they should propose to make it, or not propose, buy it. The government should buy it and should regulate it, or have some kind of nonprofit entity, spinning off some kind of entity that was like a PBS style entity that which was then regulated to allow Twitter to be a public service, a public utility. But anyway, that's sort of current. That I'm going off a little bit on a tangent there, but I want to come back again to that unconsciously, and I mentioned this in another episode earlier with Dan Frumkin, had a listing of does the media want Trump to win again, and he seems to conclude that they unconsciously do, in the sense of how they report on the right wing and report on Trump and so forth and so on. The indifference, the lack of alarm, really, about how far right and how dangerous the GOP is, and what they're doing, and it's so obvious. And if you look at your report, if you look at their reporting, if you look at what's happening on the news, they would see it. Okay, but they're so in love with a both-sidesist, neutralizing tone that they are, and also this balancing, this attempt to find a dangerous left which to justify the right wing's dangerousness is itself this cloaking device for the right wing. Okay, and the media, I don't think, intends to do that, but they just think they're being, quote unquote, serious, and they're doing what they should be doing. And I mean, this recent piece in the Times, which is has a lot of good reporting in it about Tucker Carlson, that they call him a nationalist, and that's the title of it, or white nationalist. They use the word white nationalism a fair amount, And I mean, I could go a little bit into the use of the word white nationalism. To me is extremely neutral, even though it's become a code word for essentially fascist or racist white supremacist. It's a sugarcoating of it, okay? And a nationalist essentially, you could say there's left nationalism and right nationalism or whatever. And so nationalist, um, you know, is it a patriot? Is a nationalist a patriot? What is this? Is everyone patriot is supposed to be a good thing, right? So it's not. It's sugarcoating the the by using that term. They're creating a safe space for themselves to not appear to be too critical, okay, of this very extreme right wing. And Tucker Carlson is one of these people who tries to stir up the right wing base to violence. So they're protecting themselves. It seems. In other words, they are afraid, in my perception, afraid to expose the right wing to what should be the opprobrium, and also from the governmental side, especially when we're talking about actual illegal actions, from potential indictments and prosecution and so forth and so on. They're trying to shield them by creating this out for them, for instance, by calling him a nationalist. Okay. Now, even though right-thinking people are supposed to think white nationalist bad, that means white supremacist. Well, say white supremacist, say neo-Confederate, say neo-fascist. Okay, the F word needs to be in there, and that's something that I think Carlson is a neo-fascist. He's someone who's, and that's his seems to be the model for his, and they're trying all kinds of ways to shade it and make it seem, like it's part of some kind of comfy American tradition, that he is part of, and so forth and so on. So it's really, it's concerning, but not that concerning. And it's all part of our American exceptional weird system where you don't have coups d'etat, okay? You don't have regime change, okay? But we are looking at a regime change in 2022, 2024, okay? A regime change toward the far right, okay? And the media needs to be reporting about that regime change, and whether Americans, maybe people will decide they want a regime change. I doubt if people were fully conscious of it, they would say, well, wait a minute, we don't want that. And I think that the elite owners and editors in media are trying to plan the future where there might be the Democrats might lose in 2022 and 2024, and then these media operations will have to come to some understandings and ententes with as they did it with Trump when he was in office just a year and a half ago. So that they'll have to sort of create kind of a coexistence, okay, with neo-fascism, okay, and so to call it out too much would make it seem like in the future, if these people come to power, that these are their quote unquote enemies, okay, and I think then they will have abandon their duty to democracy. Okay, they have already demanded. What I'm saying, they have, but they will have that will be the the result of it in terms of it's about their self-preservation as elite media people, and not now as reporters, as journalists, telling it as it is, okay, and speaking of it as it is. So anyway, the distortion of what is left and what is right, how strong the left and the right are, how far left and right they are, you cannot find a reliable, evaluation of that in most media sources. Norman Ornstein has done a good job in saying it is asymmetrical polarization. You do find certain people, commentators saying, or opinion writers saying, talking about asymmetrical polarization. Some opinion writers, but they are supposedly quote unquote of the left or liberal, and they're supposedly worry warts or whatever it is. I mean, anyway, but it's the newsroom, okay, needs to also report on with clarity upon what's actually happening, and also the editorial page needs to, in balance and overall, needs to create this, in my opinion, be sounding the alarm about our democracy, which is in great danger right now. So anyway, I'm sorry, I am going on a little bit here, but I feel like it's again, I'm trying to express my concern, and also this process of shielding and of cloaking that leads to complacency, and leads to complacency by elites, among other things, by the Democratic Party, because they say, well, look, I'm dealing in a soup of possibilities that are all somewhat familiar, okay, and I don't need to change course, and so all of this leads to a lulling effect that is unfortunately leading to a likely end to our democracy in the United States. So anyway, if you have thoughts about this particular presentation of the situation and these particular events, please share in the comments, and maybe we can discuss it there. If you think I'm onto something here in the video, please like it. And also, if you're enjoying Politics 2100 more generally, please subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.